Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Focused on You. We are now in the trilogy phase of this podcast, which is fantastic. Usually the third installment is the best or the worst, so we'll let you determine that. I'm your host, Jay Sanford, Director of Investment Strategy at WFG. In today's episode, we're going to answer the question, the age-old question, what do we do with underperforming investments?
Fire the investment manager.
We do not do that, not the Director of Investment Strategy at the very least. But first, before we fire myself and get into this, a quick word from the good folks at Compliance.
The opinions voiced in this program are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Global Retirement Partners LLC, a registered investment advisor. Global Retirement Partners, LPL Financial and Washington Financial Group are separate non-affiliated entities.
And now on to the show. What you already heard was El Presidente, Jeff Hamblen, threatening to fire me. Jeff, thank you for coming today, I think.
Happy to be here.
We also are joined by Mark Jensen, associate at WFG, for future podcast discussions. Mark, how are you today?
Doing well. I've tried to fire Jay, and no one's ever paid attention or listened to me. So
that is the role of the associate defined right there. Today's question is, what do we do with underperforming investments? Jeff?
Well, I think that really the bigger question is that when we're noticing something underperforming, what's our process that we go through to determine something's underperforming, and how does the investment committee come in play there, Jay?
Yeah, it is important to have a process. It's certainly not a knee-jerk reaction to an underperforming asset class. We know that sometimes funds underperform under certain market conditions, and we know that they're going to come back. As we've discussed in previous podcasts, we start with the LPL recommended list. If LPL puts a fund on watch, then we put a fund on watch, and we follow what LPL has to say. What we didn't really talk about in other episodes yet or prior to is that we do have funds that are not on the LPL recommended list. These are investments that we have used in the past that we really like, and we have created a scorecard that rates these funds, and we make sure that we're doing a due diligence on them on a very constant basis. And so that report card or that scorecard that we have will also tell us to put funds on watch list. And so we use the LPL recommended list. We also use our own scorecard. And so that's the first stage when it comes to underperformance. And we can touch on, what the scorecard is made of down the road at some point. That would be kind of a boring podcast, but maybe some of our technical people would want to hear that. But the reality of it is we have a process. We meet on a monthly basis to go over this process and to go over each and every investment that are in our portfolios. And we create the watch list. Now, Mark, how long do you have to be on the watch list before you get noticed and potentially booted?
4 quarters.
See, that is why Mark is an associate. The answer is 6 quarters.
Right. Well, Jay, because I'm real frustrated sometimes because after 4 quarters, you're right, Mark, I want to can them right away. But patience is often a better way to deal with that, because why should we wait longer? Some of these managers, are significantly underperforming, and why should we wait to 6 quarters?
Well, we've found that every manager underperforms, and so you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. If they have produced in the past, their processes remain constant. We don't want to have constant turnover in our portfolios. That can cause a tax issue, which obviously cuts into overall returns. So we found that 6 quarters is the best. Now at 4 quarters, to be fair, Mark, and I'll save you a little bit, that is when we start looking at other funds. So when the sixth quarter comes and a fund or investment haven't performed, we have to have a replacement ready to go. We haven't discussed this, but Mark not only is an associate, but he is also our head trader, and his mind actually works like a computer. So he is a fantastic trader. You can tell that he doesn't speak very well on these, but that is why he's a great trader. His mind is born in numbers, not necessarily words. So when we do have a replacement, how easy is it to kind of trade out of that, Mark?
Yeah, trading-wise is really easy. We can exchange from fund to fund or index to fund or mutual fund to index. So from a trading standpoint, that never restricts us from making any exchanges. And in general, sometimes an underperforming investment ends up being an opportunity for us because, as we've mentioned on other podcasts, we like to tax loss harvest and offset other gains in our clients' portfolios. So hopefully we're being as tax efficient as we can in the non-retirement.
And it helps you to rebalance as well sometimes.
Absolutely.
But so I get frustrated because I say, I really want to move, but, my focus a lot of times is my clients' taxes. So, Jay, how does that come into play with taxes versus changing an underperforming manager?
Yeah, well, to be fair, we have run into this situation before. We've had a manager that has gains and has suddenly, over a 6-quarter basis or even through LPL, they've decided to replace it. And we make the move. We would much rather deal with a positive gain and pay some taxes on that than have a stinker in our portfolio. Now, don't get me wrong. We're definitely looking at taxes. Mark is great about looking at, is it a long-term gain or a short-term gain? Obviously, most of these are long-term gains. And we can hold off if it means, trading in December versus January to move the tax needle to another year. But ultimately, we as, I like to call us fiduciaries, that we as fiduciaries want to be in the right investments for the right reasons. And if you're going to pay a little taxes to get out of a bad fund, then so be it. We would rather you do that than be in an underperforming fund down the road.
So let me throw this out at you because I can't believe it. If I have a really stinking fund and it's got real issues, what would be a reason why we might get out of it prior to 18 months or 6 quarters?
Well, that's a good question, and it doesn't even have to be a stinker per se. I think a good example was when Bill Gross left the PIMCO family. That was a star manager leaving a great fund with a ton of assets in it, and we were worried that there was going to be kind of a run on that fund. So you don't want to be the last person in the room on a run. And so that was a case where a star manager that we felt was going to, that did leave, that we felt was going to affect the overall portfolio, that was when we did not wait that 6 quarters. Now, we talked about it in the investment committee. It was not a singular decision on my part or on Jeff's part or Mark's part. It was a group discussion, and we came to that conclusion that it was better to get out of that.
Did it come off the LPL value list?
It went on watch. I don't know if it actually kicked off or not, and it really had struggled for a good year and a half. And I think it recently popped back on. And that makes sense to me because PIMCO's a great fund family, and we're not here as a commercial for any one particular fund family. But PIMCO is great at what they do in bonds, and so you can have an underperforming asset. We get out of it, and then down the road, maybe it comes back looking a little bit different, but still a good performing fund.
And Jay, you mentioned a run on the fund earlier. Does that mean like too many liquidations and clients trying to cash out all at once?
Yeah, that's right. And so, most funds have the ability to get out when they want to. They have a cash amount when redemptions come in. But if you have a significant amount of investors trying to get out of one fund, that means they have to start selling their investments. And first they sell their dogs, but then ultimately they start selling investments that they deem to be very good. And that is not good for a mutual fund. So, good question.
Okay, great. As an associate, I just wanted to make sure simple folk like me understand what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. So, that's our process. That's our procedure. It is set in stone, and we think that's really important. I'd like to thank our guests today. Jeff, thank you for dropping by. I know your office is right next door.
And if they're underperforming, we can blame you. So what conclusion there was?
That is what happens in the office. That is correct. Thank
Agreed.
You. Thank you for coming, Jeff. Mark, thank you very much.
Here involuntarily again.
I have a feeling that's going to be your sign-off going forward. If you have a question that you'd like us to address in future episodes, shoot us an email at info@washfinancial.com. Thanks for listening to Washington Financial Group's Focused on You podcast. Connect with us at washfinancial.com. If you enjoy our show, we'd love for you to subscribe on iTunes or wherever you access your podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening.